global average temperature has increased by 0.74 degrees Celsius. This is due to the increased concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which causes a disharmony with nature, affecting the Earth's ability to maintain a stable climate. Humans are responsible for the main factors driving climate change. Economic expansion over the last 100 years, since the time of the Industrial Revolution, has led to a continued rise in greenhouse gas emissions. In order to mitigate and avoid the worst impacts of climate change and restore balance to nature, every country has committed itself to the objective of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. After years of negotiations, world leaders adopted the Paris Agreement in 2015, a new framework for countries to combat climate change. The Paris Agreement is a truly new step forward for the international community, which affirmed their commitment to address global warming by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Compared to the Kyoto Protocol, adopted in 1997, which places an obligation only on developed countries to reduce their emissions, the Paris Agreement requires all countries to equally undertake efforts to address climate change through nationally determined contributions. Mongolia is committed to take part and plans to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions up to 14% by 2030. How will Mongolia demonstrate its commitment towards achieving this goal? Approximately 50% of Mongolia's greenhouse gas emissions are produced solely by the country's energy sector. Therefore, Mongolia aims to increase share of renewable energy to 30% of energy supply in order to reduce its level of greenhouse gas emissions.
Existing international cooperation arrangements under the UNFCCC are not enough to address all issues. The government of Japan has initiated a new instrument for cooperation called the Joint Crediting Mechanism, or the JCM.
The Japanese government is committed to reduce its emissions by 26% by 2030. As part of its efforts, the government of Japan initiated the JCM, which aims to support the transfer of leading environmentally friendly, low-carbon technologies to developing countries with the greater goal of facilitating global mitigation actions. In 2013, Mongolia and Japan signed a bilateral agreement in Ulaanbaatar, which marked the official launch of the JCM in Mongolia.
So the JCM, or the Joint Crediting Mechanism, is a cooperation between government of Japan and government of many partner countries around the world, including Mongolia. Currently, there are 17 partner countries in Asia, in Latin America, and in Africa. The JCM encourages investments between companies and also institutions in Mongolia and Japan. So Japanese entities are encouraged to bring investments into Mongolia to encourage more low-carbon development activities. IGES works with the Mongolian stakeholders in implementing the JCM in the country. We help facilitate stakeholders, Japanese government and Mongolian government, and private companies and city governments from both countries to implement and realize low-carbon development projects in the country. We also work with the government of Mongolia in establishing an MRV, or Measurement, Reporting and Verification programs in the country, and develop more capacity of many stakeholders, including private sector.
One of the projects is the 10 Megawatt solar power project in Darkhanol province. Prior to launching this project, it was almost impossible to involve the private sector in energy sector activities. This was largely due to the fact that energy tariffs were set strictly by the government regulatory body, which did not offer enough incentives for private companies. Moreover, faced with high taxes, most private companies that were involved in the sector frequently operated at a loss. This challenge discouraged many companies from working in the energy sector, and many firms who also lack necessary startup capital avoided entering the market completely. The launch of the JCM created new opportunities for the private sector to be involved in the energy sector.
The first ever large-scale solar power plant for Mongolia has been constructed in Darkhanol province in cooperation with Sharp Corporation through the Joint Crediting Mechanism. The project is working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by providing low-carbon technologies and generating know-how related to solar power, while also contributing towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in Mongolia.
The 10 megawatt solar power plant in Darkhan was designed to fit solar power conditions in Mongolia. It supplies around 14,000 megawatt hour of electricity per year. It avoids 11,200 tons of coal consumption every year, which means 16,000 tons of carbon dioxide are avoided from being released into the atmosphere. At the same time, the project saves an estimate 145,000 tons of water per year. This is equivalent to the annual water consumption of almost 100,000 people.
Mongolia has rich resources of renewable energy, especially solar energy. Mongolia has a huge potential to become a net exporter of renewable energy in the future.
Another project that's being implemented under the JCM in Mongolia is the Monarch Project, a 10 megawatt solar power plant that provides energy for agricultural activities by Everyday Farm LLC. The solar power plant produces and supplies 17 to 18 million kilowatt-hour of electricity. The solar power plant project has been supported by the JCM and now connects to the electricity grid in Mongolia's central region. This project aims to facilitate the transfer of leading technologies from Japan's agricultural sector to Mongolia, helping to produce safe and ecologically grown fruits and vegetables.
By receiving the support from the joint crediting mechanism, cooperation between Mongolian and Japanese private entities have opportunities to be engaged in renewable energy projects which required high investment.
One of the factors that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions as well as local air pollution is the smoke caused by incomplete combustion of coal stoves. This has posed a constant issue for the country that the government of Mongolia found difficult to manage. However, the JCM is creating opportunities to overcome this problem. Ano Service Company has installed efficient heat-only boilers at Bornur district of Tuk province at school number 118 in Hanwol district of Ulaanbaatar city.
The capacity of Bornur district's central heating boiler is 1.8 megawatt, supplying facilities within the district such as the school, kindergarten, public organizations, households and shops fully connected to a unified heating system. The main advantage of our boiler is that it has a high coefficient of performance.
The main benefit of this bilateral cooperation between Mongolia and Japan under the joint crediting mechanism is its contribution to the initial investment made by private companies. It applies not only to solar power plants projects but also to the transfer of technologies that address energy efficiency in heat production and electricity transmission systems.
There are many more examples of private companies doing business in Mongolia's energy sector, particularly in the renewable energy market. Only a few of them are mentioned here. In order to realize green development and fulfill Mongolia's commitment to the world, not only public sector leadership but also participation of private sector are vital. Continued commitment of Mongolia's private sector as the main driving force behind the country's economic growth will be the key to this success. Recognizing this, the government supports collaboration between public and private stakeholders.
So in order to support the expansion of renewable energy projects and programs, the government of Mongolia recently approved a law that exempts customs and value-added taxes from products and equipment for renewable energy projects. Additionally, in order to encourage enterprises to use renewable energy, such as rooftop solar panel, the government is preparing regulations for purchasing excess energy generated by these businesses.
In 2015, the Parliament of Mongolia adopted strategic policy paper on energy and green development with target for increasing the country's share of renewable energy to 20% by 2020 and to 30% by 2030. Previously, it was unimaginable to set a goal of even a 10% increase, as only several years ago the rate was less than 2%. Today, share of renewable energy has reached 11.8%. This outcome was realized through effective government policies and measures, active bilateral cooperation, and courage steps taken by private companies both in Mongolia and abroad.
By implementing climate change mitigations project, we don't only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we also bring more benefits to the people and to the society. Actions by private sectors, corporations, investors, cities, and individuals are very important in the climate change mitigation. We need more private sector initiatives, cooperation, technology, and eagerness to work together for the climate change mitigation in Mongolia in order to reap more benefits for the future of the Mongolia.
Renewable energy has been rapidly expanding across the world. Over the last 5 years alone, renewable energy capacity has increased from 15% to 25%. By 2030, this growth is projected to reach 45%, according to the International Renewable Energy Agency. The main drivers of this increase are policy incentives and also technological innovations, which has led to a dramatic drop in costs. Stakeholders in energy sector welcome these developments, as the fall in the price of renewable has opened a window of opportunity for more companies to enter into the market. Mongolia's nature, including its wealth of sunshine throughout the year and a strong wind, sets an ideal location for the promotion of renewable energy, and with it, a clear way forward for Mongolia to meet its climate commitments.